The galaxy had warned them. For centuries, interstellar travelers, explorers, and traders had chronicled the frozen reaches beyond the Veil Nebula, recording environments so mercilessly cold that unprotected flesh could crystallize into ice in mere seconds. Ships that ventured too far without proper shielding would arrive with instruments frozen solid, and entire colonies of unprepared life forms had vanished into the white void without a trace. Historical records, both digital and inscribed on crystalline memory cores, detailed the horror: biological systems failing within heartbeats, mechanical systems freezing into immobility, and entire planets rendered uninhabitable by the ceaseless cold. The Galactic Council had tried every method to communicate the threat. Massive broadcasts pulsed across multiple star systems, their messages repeated with surgical precision in every galactic dialect. Holocoms flickered with the warning: regions beyond Alpha Ternion are subject to instant frostbite. Biological entities must not linger. Protective measures are limited. Survival is improbable. Proceed only with extreme caution, or not at all. The phrase instant frostbite became a standard fright word in many civilizations, a chilling term whispered in fear across spaceports and colony hubs. Alien scientists had written entire treatises on the lethal chemistry of the region, noting that even the subatomic particles themselves seemed to carry freezing potential. And yet, despite centuries of cautionary tales, dire statistics, and countless memorials marking failed expeditions, one species consistently ignored the warnings: humans. They were not reckless in a random, naive sense. The galaxy had long cataloged human audacity, their peculiar combination of ingenuity, stubbornness, and inexplicable joy in risk. While most species shrank from the cold, humans seemed to thrive on the idea of impossible challenges. To them, danger was not a limit but a test, a stage upon which they could prove the power of their spirit and intellect. Where others calculated risk and retreated, humans laughed, adapted, and improvised. The warnings of the Galactic Council, chilling as they were, became for them a tantalizing invitation rather than a deterrent. The first human expedition to the frozen reaches of Alpha Ternion was, by design, small but highly specialized. Captain Elora Voss, a veteran of dozens of deep space missions, commanded the crew. She was not reckless. She was strategic, meticulous, and deeply attuned to human adaptability. Yet even she could not suppress a smirk when reviewing the Council's latest warnings before departure. Alien advisors had insisted on detailed contingency plans, emergency hibernation protocols, and environmental shields strong enough to withstand temperatures measured in negative hundreds of degrees. The humans reviewed these with diligent attention, but with one glaring difference: they added recreational gear. Ski poles, thermal boots, reinforced exosuits colored with bright, defiant patterns. When the expedition's ship emerged from hyperspace into the outskirts of Alpha Ternion, the human crew was struck by the landscape. The ice plains stretched endlessly, vast and glittering under the dim, fractured light of distant binary stars. Wind currents ripped across the frozen terrain, whipping up crystalline frost into spinning, slicing torrents. Jagged ice spires jutted from the surface like frozen teeth, and deep fissures split the landscape into a chaotic mosaic of white and silver. For most species, the view alone would have been enough to trigger retreat protocols. Not humans. Alien observers, some accompanying the humans for study, huddled inside reinforced transport pods, trembling at the sheer violence of the environment. Core Vale, a sleek silicate researcher, extended one fragile appendage to the window, his sensors quivering. The kinetic energy of these winds, exceeding 60 meters per second, combined with ambient temperatures below the absolute minimum for our species' exposure, will be fatal in seconds. Surely they realize. But the humans were already preparing. Brightly colored suits were fastened, goggles adjusted, exoskeletons sealed and calibrated. The sound of human laughter carried through the communication channels, unbothered by the screaming wind. Captain Voss's voice rang out, calm and commanding. Check your shields. Monitor your core temperature. Then let's move. It's going to be fun. The Council's warnings, centuries in the making, had assumed the cold alone was enough to terrify and immobilize life. They had not accounted for humans. To humans, extreme conditions were not obstacles but opportunities. Every hazard was a puzzle, every danger a chance to innovate. The cold did not intimidate, it inspired. Shields and exosuits were not merely survival tools, but instruments of exploration, allowing humans to bend the lethal environment to their will. As the first human boots touched the snow-crusted ice plains, the surrounding aliens could hardly comprehend what they were witnessing. The frostbite that would have instantly destroyed most life forms barely registered as a threat. Each human step was deliberate, controlled, yet exuberant. Their laughter echoed across the frozen ridges, carried by the gale like a defiant song of life. And while alien scholars recorded their measurements in stunned silence, the humans, true to form, took a moment to revel in the beauty of the landscape. Alora Voss looked back at the fleet of alien observers, her voice calm, almost teasing over the comms. Yes, we're in danger. Yes, this is lethal. But yes, we're also exactly where we need to be. There was no bravado in her tone, only the quiet certainty of humans who had faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. Where the galaxy saw impossibility, humans saw challenge. Where others froze in fear, humans moved forward. And with every breath of frigid air that threatened to pierce their suits, they reminded the galaxy of one immutable truth: humans were never merely survivors. They were masters of survival itself. And so, the first steps of the expedition were more than an arrival, they were a declaration. The galaxy had warned them. The frost was instantaneous and merciless. And yet, humans had come to play. The humans did not simply step onto the frozen plains, they moved with purpose, with audacity, and with a kind of joy that seemed to defy the very laws of the galaxy. Captain Alora Voss watched her crew with a mixture of pride and disbelief, though she had long since stopped doubting the species she led. They were, in every way, extraordinary. Where other species recoiled at the biting winds, where even the hardiest interstellar explorers trembled before the frost, humans thrived. Brightly colored suits, carefully engineered for both protection and mobility, shimmered against the stark white of the ice plains. Each human was equipped with reinforced exoskeletons, thermal boots, and goggles designed to shield eyes from the glare of the binary stars. But alongside these survival tools were elements utterly unnecessary for survival: ski poles, flexible sleds, and even small harnesses for launching into daring jumps. The aliens accompanying them could only stare in confusion, their biologies utterly incompatible with the cold, their sensors unable to process the sheer audacity of what they were witnessing. The first human skier, a young engineer named Juno, launched herself down the slope with a fluidity that made the alien sensors whirl in frustration. Frost sprayed into the air, glittering like a storm of diamonds. Each jump over a jagged ice spire was precise, yet seemingly reckless, a blend of instinct, calculation, and exhilaration. Her laughter, high and clear, carried over the gale. It was a sound completely foreign to the harsh, sterile environment, and Corvale, the silicate researcher, could only marvel. They are playing in this environment. They are enjoying it, he whispered into the comlink, though none of his fellow observers could fully comprehend the human mindset. And the humans did not stop. They carved graceful tracks along frozen cliffs, leaving bright trails in the otherwise pristine white. They built temporary forts from blocks of ice, arranging them with both efficiency and creativity, like children in a park rather than explorers in a death zone. Small sleds were strapped to their exosuits, allowing daring aerial maneuvers as they launched themselves across fissures and ravines. Every motion seemed imbued with a singular philosophy that danger was not to be feared, but to be challenged, reshaped, and even celebrated. Captain Voss, standing atop the highest ridge, surveyed the scene with a mixture of strategy and wonder. The wind whipped at her suit, yet she barely noticed the sting. "It's not about surviving," she said to Juno, who had joined her for a brief pause. "It's about proving that we can. Frostbite isn't a threat, it's a puzzle, a test. It tells us we exist, that we're alive, that even here, in the coldest reaches of space, we can find joy, mastery, and freedom." The aliens looked on, some recording data obsessively, others frozen in what could almost be described as awe. For most, the humans' actions defied every survival model ever computed. Conventional logic suggested that even with the most advanced suits, sustained activity in this cold should result in rapid hypothermia, incapacitation, or instant frostbite. Yet the humans moved like living embodiments of adaptation itself. As more humans joined the slopes, they began forming patterns, sweeping arcs, daring jumps over spires, and synchronized descents that seemed almost choreographed. The sound of their laughter echoed across the frozen plains, bouncing off ice cliffs and ridges, creating a surreal symphony in the desolate expanse. Corvale, who had never experienced humor or joy in his long crystalline life, felt a strange, unquantifiable sensation prick at his neural nodes. It was envy. A deep, inexplicable envy that perhaps no species should feel, directed at another's courage and delight in the face of annihilation. And yet, no human faltered. Each twist, turn, and daring leap was executed with both recklessness and meticulous skill. Their exosuits flexed and adjusted in real time, responding to minute changes in slope, ice texture, and wind shear. It was as if the humans had turned a lethal wasteland into a playground, a theater where every slope was a stage and every move a declaration of life. Even in the midst of the blinding snowstorm, human ingenuity shone. Temporary shelters made of ice were quickly assembled to provide brief respites, strategically positioned to catch the least wind while maximizing view of the surrounding slopes. Portable thermal generators, designed for both efficiency and mobility, hummed faintly, feeding warmth into the exosuits of those resting, but never dampening their spirits. To them, survival was not an anxiety. It was a canvas for mastery and thrill. Alora's voice came over the comlink once more, carrying both authority and amusement. We don't just survive the cold. We own it. Every step, every jump, every laugh is a message to ourselves, to the galaxy, to anyone watching. Humans do not cower. We do not yield. We move forward, always, even when the universe tells us to stop. The aliens exchanged nervous glances. Data streams recorded thermodynamic readings, skeletal stress, and heart rates, all of which defied their calculations. The humans' physiology, aided by their suits, seemed almost supernatural. To Corvale, the meaning was clear. Even if the mathematics could not explain it, humans were something fundamentally different. Where the galaxy saw danger, they saw adventure. Where others calculated fear, humans calculated possibility, and they executed it with style. As the sun of the binary system dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the icy plains, the humans paused only briefly to admire their tracks. The lines they carved were not just marks in snow, they were symbols of defiance. Symbols of life asserting itself in the face of what the galaxy had declared impossible. And though the Council's warnings had been stern, precise, and terrifying, the humans' response was singular. We are here, and we will thrive. The first human ski patrol had begun, and the frozen plains, deadly and unyielding, were already beginning to bend under the audacious, irrepressible force of human will. The humans didn't merely survive the frost, they thrived in it. Every movement across the frozen expanse was a demonstration of audacity, skill, and an almost intoxicating joy. Where the cold should have been a silent executioner, it became a playground. Captain Elora Voss moved alongside her crew, scanning the jagged ice spires and glittering ridges. The wind howled like a living entity, tearing at every exposed surface, but the humans barely flinched. Their exosuits flexed in real time, adjusting to the shifting temperatures and the whipping gusts, as if the suits themselves were extensions of their daring will. Juno, the young engineer, and now one of the expedition's most proficient skiers, took a running leap from a ridge that would have shattered the bones of most species. Her body arced through the air, poles held tightly, skies slicing the wind. She landed on a narrow, jagged ice bridge that connected two massive spires, sending a spray of diamond-like frost into the air. The glittering shards caught the fading light of the binary suns, reflecting it like 1,000 tiny stars, and her laughter rang clear across the frozen canyon. Alien observers froze in disbelief. "How is this possible?" Corvale whispered, his voice trembling. "No life form should withstand this." The human's interaction with the terrain was not reckless. It was intuitive, almost symbiotic. Each slope, fissure, and cliff was read and interpreted in an instant. Their eyes, though shielded behind thick goggles, scanned constantly, calculating angles, distances, and wind currents in real time. Muscles, augmented by the exosuits, responded with precision. Every jump, every twist, every carve was a demonstration of instinct honed by centuries of survival and evolution. And above all, every action was accompanied by joy. Where the galaxy saw lethal danger, humans saw freedom. Where others calculated fear, humans calculated exhilaration. Captain Voss paused at a crest overlooking the largest fissure in the area. A chasm, wide enough to swallow a transport pod, yawned below, its bottom shrouded in swirling frost clouds. Other species would have recoiled at the mere sight, recalculating escape trajectories and life-preserving maneuvers. Voss did neither. Instead, she smiled and spoke over the comlink. "We don't just confront danger. We challenge it. Every hazard is a puzzle, every extreme condition a canvas. Frostbite is temporary. Fear is optional. Mastery that lasts." Her words were not for the aliens, who still observed in stunned silence, nor for the sensors recording every vital sign, angle, and calculation. Her words were for her crew, for the humans who had learned that survival and joy were not mutually exclusive. They leapt in synchronized patterns over ice spires, their poles tracing arcs in the air, landing with grace on ridges and valleys below. Each move left a track in the snow that was more than a physical mark. It was a statement. Humans belong in the impossible. Humans own the impossible. Even the harsh, screaming winds that should have frozen them in place were turned into tools. Skies skimmed across frost-slicked ridges with minimal friction, allowing for breathtaking speed and control. The smallest nuances of terrain were exploited with instinctive creativity. A narrow ice ledge became a launch point for aerial spins. A jagged cliff became a ramp for daring descents, and frozen crevices became intricate courses for weaving and maneuvering. Nothing was wasted, nothing ignored, nothing feared. The aliens, huddled together in observation pods, could only gape. Their sensors, calibrated for every known extreme in the galaxy, struggled to record coherent data. Frostbite thresholds, muscle fatigue models, and cognitive limits were all exceeded repeatedly, with each human surpassing the last. Corvell's crystalline mind, unable to comprehend joy in the face of certain death, began to register something new: awe. Not just at the skill, but at the philosophy behind it. Humans did not simply resist danger, they redefined it. As the day waned and the light from the binary suns shifted to a muted violet glow, the humans built temporary ice shelters. These were not crude constructions. They were carefully engineered fortresses of frost, strategically placed to catch minimal wind and maximize stability. Inside, they warmed briefly, drank nutrient geles, and laughed at the sheer absurdity of their environment. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species are watching this and calling us insane, Juno said, her breath fogging inside her goggles. Voss chuckled. Let them watch. Let them learn. It's not insanity. It's mastery. Night fell rapidly, and the temperature plunged further. But humans continued. Small teams, equipped with thermal generators and advanced sensors, carved new trails and performed daring maneuvers even in near darkness. The ice sparkled under the pale glow of the distant stars, turning the frozen plains into a cathedral of frost. Every jump, every descent, every carved track was a hymn to human courage, creativity, and indomitable spirit. Corvell, silent and awestruck, finally whispered what he had been unable to articulate for hours. They are extraordinary, not merely for surviving, for living. The other alien observers, though cautious, had to agree. Humans were not just surviving in a death zone. They were thriving, elevating the act of survival to art. And so, amid the screaming winds, jagged ice spires, and infinite frost, humans laughed. They skied. They leapt. They danced with death, and with every daring act, they left an unspoken message for the galaxy. limits exist only to be challenged, and no matter how lethal the environment, humanity will not just endure it, will triumph with style, audacity, and joy. Word of human audacity spread faster than any communication protocol in the galaxy had ever anticipated. From the edge of the Veil, Nebula, to the core systems near the Galactic Council chambers, reports arrived in waves. Humans are skiing in Alpha Turnian. Extreme cold. Frostbite risk, instantaneous. Biological survival, improbable. Yet they persist. Scholars, scientists, and strategists scrolled through endless streams of telemetry, video transmissions, and environmental data, struggling to reconcile the impossible. Humans were thriving in an environment that should have annihilated them in minutes. The council convened an emergency session. The chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of star systems, many of whom had lived for centuries without ever witnessing anything like this. Holo-projections displayed the terrain, jagged ice cliffs, endless frost plains, and swirling storms that could crush a transport pod in seconds. Then, the live feed showed humans descending slopes with breathtaking skill, carving tracks across the snow, performing daring jumps, and laughing as if danger were nothing more than a casual game. "What is this?" asked a verdant, tentacled envoy from Virelia. Their physiology should not withstand the environment. Their morgulation models predict death within seconds. Corvell, the silicate observer who had accompanied the expedition, transmitted a simple phrase over the council's data grid. They are alive, thriving, defying every expectation. Every sensor reading confirmed the impossible. Core temperatures were stable. Heart rates, even under extreme exertion, remained within survivable ranges. Skeletal integrity was maintained despite the incredible stresses of jumps and landings. The humans' laughter, audible even across the digital comms, seemed to reverberate through the chamber, almost mocking centuries of caution. Galactic scientists recalibrated models over and over, but the numbers refused to lie. Humans were rewriting the rules of survival. Every attempt to predict their limitations failed spectacularly. It was not just physical adaptation. It was ingenuity, audacity, and a philosophy of defiance. Humans did not see the cold as a threat. They saw it as a playground, a challenge to be mastered. Where other species calculated risk, humans calculated opportunity and executed it flawlessly. Meanwhile, across the network, reports began arriving from independent observers, explorers on nearby moons, travelers passing the nebula's periphery, and even merchant vessels. They all sent the same bewildered accounts, humans performing feats that should have been impossible, laughing in the face of death, leaving intricate tracks across frozen canyons, and using the terrain with an instinctive understanding that defied every law of physics and biology known to the galaxy. The Council, long accustomed to imposing limits on species for their own safety, found themselves facing a truth that could not be legislated or reasoned away. Humans had altered the perception of what was possible. Their actions were no longer merely a curiosity, they were a statement. The audacity, creativity, and sheer joy humans expressed were an affront to the universe's assumptions. Corvell, recording every moment, began a private log. Observation: humans appear to redefine environmental limits through willpower, adaptability, and creativity. Standard survival models are inadequate. Emotional and psychological factors, joy, thrill, defiance, may play a role in physiological endurance. Hypothesis: humans' cognitive approach to danger fundamentally alters their interaction with lethal environments. Recommendation: further observation imperative. As humans continued their synchronized descents, jumping over frost spires and weaving through jagged ice ridges, the galaxy watched in awe. Alien species, some centuries old, realized that humans represented a force unlike any they had known. The combination of resilience, innovation, and fearless joy was not just remarkable, it was revolutionary. The human philosophy became evident in every motion. The frozen plains were not merely a hazard to overcome. They were a stage for ingenuity. Every jump, every maneuver, every laugh was a signal. Humans belonged where no one else dared tread. Where the galaxy once measured survival by caution, humans measured it by mastery and delight. Even the most cautious analysts admitted it. The human success was as much psychological as physical. They had turned fear into exhilaration, danger into a playground, and death into an art form. The galaxy had long sought limits, thresholds, and absolute laws. Humans had discovered how to laugh at them. By the time the binary suns dipped below the horizon, painting the ice plains in shades of violet and silver, it was clear to everyone observing, humans had not merely survived. They had claimed dominion over the impossible. And though the Council's warnings had been precise, deliberate, and terrifying, the humans' actions sent a singular unspoken message to the galaxy: we do not retreat. We do not yield. We thrive. The frozen plains, which had been predicted to annihilate any biological life within minutes, had become a testament to the indomitable human spirit. As the first human ski patrol carved intricate patterns across the ice, the galaxy understood something fundamental. Humans were not just a species. They were a force of nature, rewriting the very rules of existence with every leap, every track, and every defiant laugh carried on the wind. Even as the humans continued to master the frozen plains, the Galactic Council finally intervened. The warning, once theoretical, now came as a direct transmission to the human expedition. The message was stark, formal, and intended to intimidate. You are in immediate danger. Return at once or face annihilation. The conditions here are beyond any known threshold for survival. Compliance is mandatory. For most species, such a directive would have triggered panic, retreat, or at least cautious negotiation. For humans, it elicited only laughter. Captain Elora Voss adjusted her goggles, frost clinging to the edges of her exosuit, and replied calmly over the comlink, her voice carrying over the screaming gale, "We know." And that's exactly why we're not leaving. The words were more than defiance. They were a declaration. The humans had not come merely to survive the lethal cold. They had come to conquer it, to master it, to transform a death trap into a proving ground for ingenuity, courage, and joy. Every slope they descended, every jump they executed, every track they left behind was a testament to human creativity and resilience. Where the galaxy saw limits, humans saw opportunity. Where others calculated fear, humans calculated exhilaration. As the expedition pushed further into the heart of Alpha Ternion, the humans began leaving markers of their presence. Temporary ice shelters, carved trails, and intricate patterns in the snow were more than practical, they were symbols. Alien observers documented them, unable to fully understand the human mindset. Each creation was a signature of life itself, a proclamation that no environment, no matter how hostile, could suppress the audacity of humanity. The frozen plains, once feared across star systems as a lethal wasteland, were now a stage for human triumph. They danced across the ice like artists with a singular purpose: to live fully, joyfully, and without compromise. They laughed in the face of annihilation, embraced the wind as an ally rather than a threat, and transformed instant frostbite zones into playgrounds of skill and courage. Corvell, the silicate observer, recorded in his private log, observation: humans do not merely survive. They redefine the environment. Their approach combines physiology, technology, and an indomitable will. Emotional response appears to enhance physical endurance. Joy and thrill are integrated strategies for survival. Conclusion: humans represent a unique evolutionary phenomenon. They cannot be measured by conventional metrics. Night fell across the icy expanse, and the auroras of distant stars shimmered over the frozen ridges. The humans paused only briefly to take in the spectacle, their tracks winding across the plains like living calligraphy. Even in darkness, their determination was unwavering. Thermal generators hummed softly, exosuits flexed in synchronized patterns, and laughter continued to pierce the night, defying the cold, the wind, and the expectations of the galaxy. The humans' message was clear. They were alive. They were thriving. And they had done so not by cautious calculation alone, but by embracing the impossible, laughing in the face of death, and turning every hazard into a canvas for ingenuity and joy. Where other species would have seen finality, humans saw a challenge and transformed it into triumph. As the expedition prepared to descend the final ridge for the day, the last rays of the binary suns caught the ice in a kaleidoscope of silver and violet. The galaxy, watching from afar, could not help but acknowledge the audacity of the species it had long underestimated. Humans were not just survivors. They were pioneers of possibility, masters of their environment, and a living testament to the power of courage, creativity, and indomitable will. And so, the humans skied on. Every jump, every turn, every laugh carried across the frozen plains became a legacy that no warning, no frost, no law of physics could erase. They had taken a region deemed instantly lethal by the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy and made it their playground. In doing so, they left a mark that would endure far longer than the ice itself, a declaration that where humanity walks, life is never constrained by fear, and no limit is too extreme for the human spirit to conquer. The galaxy had spoken its warnings. Humans had answered, not with caution, not with retreat, but with defiance. They had turned impossible frost into a proving ground, and in doing so, they had once again reminded the universe of a simple truth: humanity does not merely exist. Humanity thrives against all odds in every corner of the cosmos.